But Brandon, let's close out the podcast, giving our 1 through 5 for our big board. If you've been chugging along on podcast services around the world, thank you. That was a really long middle segment, and this will be probably a shorter one as there's less guys to talk about. I mean, there's 10, and now, 5 people for this one, so less to pick from us. If you're on YouTube, make sure to go check out the other 2, the first 2 segments from our big board. And Brandon, before we get into the exact prospects we're going to look at for this third and final segment, I will start with you because I am a gracious host and a gentleman. What's your 1 through 5 for our big board?
At number 5, Rashawn Gary, the defensive end from Michigan. At number 4, Greedy Williams, the cornerback from LSU. At 3, the defensive tackle from Houston, who will only fight his coach when it's cold outside and he's got a big puffy jacket on. Ed Oliver. At number 2, Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle from Alabama. And at number 1, Nick Bosa, defensive end from the Ohio State.
Yeah, man. I mean, when it's cold, you got to have that jacket. It's real cold. And I like how there's people, really to me that didn't, don't come at me. I'm sarcastic when I say that. Don't really mean that as a bad thing, but it was just funny that it's really? We're going to fight over a jacket, guys? We're really going to fight? This is the molehill that both of you want to die on. This is the molehill. Applegate, come on, man.
Apparently.
He wants to show him who's boss because he doesn't want to play. But my top 5, Ed Oliver, the guy we were just talking about, at number 5, defensive tackle for the Houston Cougars. Then at number 4, Devin White, linebacker from the LSU Tigers. Then at number 3, Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle from Alabama Roll Tide. Then at number 2, Greedy Williams, the cornerback from LSU. And then at number 1, the injured Nick Bosa, defensive end from the Ohio State University.
The injured and no longer in college, Nick Bosa.
No longer in college. But the first guy I want to start with, Brandon, is Ed Oliver. And the reason why is, if I remember, future Ricky puts it above Brandon's head. On the onside kick, Mark and I looked at Ed Oliver to Nick Bosa and kind of looked between them. Who should be the number 1 pick? Kind of what do we think between them? And Mark put out an interesting conversation, one that is started to catch some steam moving forward, and that's the fact that because of the weight of Ed Oliver, because most sites list him at 290, 292, there's much more, like Mel Kiper said, he's closer to 275 than the 290 plus in which he is listed. Many people are saying they don't know if he's going to be able to play inside because if he's 6'3", 275, that's not big enough to play defensive tackle in the NFL. And then on top of it, people go, well, if he plays outside, he doesn't have the pass rush moves that you need to live on the outside. So with me, I have him drop. He dropped from yours because he was number 2 last time we did it. Even in Mel Kiper, he is now the number 8 prospect on Mel Kiper's big board. I want to ask you, are we all overreacting to this one thing, or is there kind of some fuel to this fire why Ed Oliver is dropping on most big boards?
You know what? I think that probably big boards in general are just overreactions up or down for the entire thing.
It's whatever you like better.
Exactly. So that's what I'd say. It's probably just a bit of an overreaction. I think if you take that away, you still have a guy who's got some really good first step quickness, a guy who can get out of his break and get out of his block really, really well, really quick, and get to the quarterback, wrap up a running back for a loss. He's a guy in college who's been, if you look at his seasons, just very consistent. Didn't go high up or high down when you're looking season to season. It's also a guy who has great strength. These are all things, of course, that he needs to have in his position in football. But the strength that he has is really incredible and helps allow him to get the edge against his defender. He's a guy who is I think a great talent, and one that you can sit here and debate all day long is one one thing, and what one, some could say is one ticky-tack thing really going to be the huge difference between whether he's at this spot or at this spot, and the answer would probably be, yeah, it probably will be. But right now, I don't think that that's a major thing. I think as long as he can do all the things, like in terms of what I'm talking, some quickness, speed, strength, all those things, as long as those things are still there and the core is there, the outside you can look at and say, you could probably change this a little bit easier than what you could over here.
Well, and one of the things I do want to bring up, because like I said, Mark and I had that discussion, Nick Bosa compared to Ed Oliver, and I want to give some love to Legion Smokey, who commented on that video, and he said, people said the same thing about Aaron Donald, saying he's too small, but look at him now. And the reason why I bring that up is even in his description, Mel Kiper says that the same thing I've said, which is the big criticism. He's smaller than what's listed. He hasn't developed consistent pass rush moves. And the next line is, that's why I have always said the comparison to Aaron Donald was unfair. And to me, I don't necessarily think this will be an Aaron Donald situation. Like, I don't know if, let's say he is 275, because he's technically listed at 295. I mean, let's be honest. On my, it's in my pocket. I'm going to actually do this live on the podcast. I'm going to pull out my wallet, and I'm going to pull up my license really quick and look at the weight on my license. It is technically wrong. They did update it. 250. Do you think I'm 250, Brandon? Do you think I am 5'5"? Technically, I'm 5'5", 250. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
No, I am 5'7", 275. I just haven't changed it because I don't know why I haven't changed the height. Like, that's my height from, like, what would that be, when I was a 16-year-old? So really, that's not that good. I've only grown 2 inches since junior year of high school.
No, it's not.
But I've gained quite a bit of weight since I've gone to 21. I was 250. This one, I am only 275. Thought I got a Siri thing. Like, remember last week I said something on the podcast and my Siri went off. But that to me is the same thing here. Like, he could be 292, but we don't know. Like, some people are saying that he's 275. And I don't know if he, like, let's say he is 275. Is he going to be able to get to that 292 at the least to play defensive tackle in the NFL? Because if you're 275, you ain't playing defensive tackle. Offensive linemen will do this, and they'll be able to hold you back. You'll be so small inside. You need to be bigger when you're running through, kind of fill up those gaps that the runners can't get through.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I'm hearing that, but I think that, again, on something like that, that's something where a guy, I think, could change some things to be able to make that
add
happen.
Some weight that weighs, or add some muscle that weighs more.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I'm not saying it's easy. Not going to say that, he can just, go out here and, go and eat 2 Thanksgiving meals and, he's got it.
Not going to do what Chad Johnson was doing, practicing for, I think it was late in his career. He was in practice and he's just eating McDonald's. And he's like, it don't matter. I'm working it off. You don't think Ed Oliver's going to do that? Grab a couple McRibs, eat a couple McRibs, kind of gain that weight?
Well, he probably should. It's only for a certain time while supplies last. But it doesn't affect me or really get to me as it may with other people. Oh, well, we can't. He's out of the discussion. He's too small. Out of the discussion. That's not something that really I look at and go, yeah, he'd really been out of the discussion for me.
And let me pull in the other guy that we were going to talk about. And the reason why I'm pulling him in is because you have him at 2 above Ed Oliver on your board. Yeah. I was going to ask the question, well, if let's say you're the Raiders. Nick Bosa gets taken off the board. Do you just go next best player, Ed Oliver? But I would think that question would be no, because you have Quinnen Williams as your second best. And if you were thinking defensive tackle, I would think that you personally would take Williams over Ed Oliver if you were thinking interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, again, this isn't the biggest guy that you're going to get on the line, but he's a guy who is extremely tough, extremely strong, has great strength, and he's a guy that just fights, rips, clubs, whatever he needs to do to try and, get to the quarterback or get to the running back or get to whoever has the football. And that's what I really like what he does on the defensive front, is because he does all those things and he does them very effectively. Again, people will knock him for his size, but this is just an explosive player and one that is going to definitely always have an impact and certainly has for Alabama.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the LSU tape from this year, Quinnen Williams basically dominated in that game. And the thing that I'm going to say it's kind of scary with Quinnen Williams is you watch him and you're like, damn, that kid knows how to ball. And then you go, oh, that's right. He hasn't played much football. He still has room to grow. Like, when he gets to the NFL, he's going to learn so much that he is just going to get better than he already is. And I got to give props to Mark Weber, because on our first mock draft, I didn't have Quinnen Williams in our first mock draft because it was right after you and I did our big board, and I was like, I don't know if I'm sold yet on Quinnen Williams. Obviously, I am now because he's in my top 5 of my big board, but I just have a feeling, and this is an inkling in my gut, that right now we've seen the flip. Most people are putting Williams ahead of Oliver in their mock drafts. And I wonder if, because Brandon and I talked about this in the first mock draft we did, and I'll throw the question at you. I know we didn't prep this question, but it shouldn't be too hard of one, and you don't have to be like, yes, this is the rock I'm going to die on. It could just be your gut feeling right now. We talked about who could be that guy, like that Laramie Tunsil, that Josh Allen. Not exactly like they did. Like Laramie Tunsil was because the pot-smoking picture came out moments before the draft with Josh Allen. It was the inappropriate tweet that he threw out or that came out right before the draft had started. And I look at it, and not because of those reasons, because of the reasons that we've talked about on this podcast, I have a feeling that Ed Oliver is going to be the guy whose stock drops by the time we get to draft. Where started out up here, and then as we get through the process, just goes down and down. I'm not saying he's going to fall out of the first round, but it could be something where, oh, wow, he was the second best prospect and went 10th overall. Or it could be, wow, he was the second best prospect, went 12th overall, 13th overall. I feel like he's the one. I'm not saying he's going to go that low, but he will be the guy that we look at and go, man, when this whole draft process started, we were really high on him. And now look at where he's drafted. With you, do you think that's going to be Ed Oliver, or is there a different guy you look at and you go, you know what? This might be a guy that has some droppability to him by the time we get to draft night.
Are you talking players in general, or are you talking
in general?
Just well for me already was the fact that who did I not have in my big board this time around that I did last time? That was a running back, and that was from Alabama, Damian Harris. And it's the fact that throughout the last games, a couple of games since we did the last big board, he wasn't being used as much.
He wasn't even the leading rusher
by Alabama
in the Georgia game.
No, it was Jacobs.
Yeah, Jacobs.
And the reason that I have him out is because you can't help sometimes how a team is using you. When he's getting in there, he's certainly doing what he can. But I also think that when you're saying those two things, when he's getting in there, doing what he can, it's like, I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means, and I still think that that's a guy who someone could stretch for and get him end of round 1 or in a round 2, possibly. But and I know that people are probably saying, "Whoa, this guy needs to get off of his bowl that he's smoking," but I think Damian Harris was a guy that I looked at coming in with the big board to start as someone who could have been, maybe certainly for me, he was like a middle to late big board choice. Definitely has dropped out of mind there, but in a more general sense, this is how we do it all the time. This is why these first couple of big boards, I'm glad you're watching, but they're useless because they change so much and so often by the time we get to the final big day of draft day in April. And it's because this happens, that happens. Oh, this guy gets hurt. Oh, this guy has a great combine. Oh, this guy who was way up here sucked at the combine. I mean, that is just it in a nutshell, though. There's so much more to go, and this is just the first glimmer.
And that's why, for me, and this is a general thing, I love the draft process because the thing I love to do, and I wish I wouldn't have been so stupid to do it. So this is what we're actually going to do next year is starting with this year. I'm going to save these big boards. So like we can look back years down the line and be like, man, remember when we had this guy so high number one and then look at how it ended. And then you can see kind of, all right, this was my first big board. How much has it changed through? Because you and I do 5 of them. We're on 2. We've got 3 more left. We do, let me pull it up the exact, because there's a kind of method to our madness here where you and I kind of do it where it's February 4th, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is that one or either March 4th is around combine time. So here's what it is. February 4th is the one that happens after the championship game. So it's like the whole college season is over. What did we see different in the bowl games or in the month that, or the 2 months we haven't done a big board? Then the March 4th one is, all right, we've seen the combine. We've seen some personal workouts. What can we get from that? And then honestly, our April 1st one is, all right, drafts in a month or drafts in less than a month. Brandon, what's our final one? This is like the one that we're locking into, where obviously there's more mock drafts, but like that's our kind of big board. And it's the same for the NBA. Like, oh, here's non-conference, here's conference play, here's the end of the season, here's the end of the tournament, and then here's NBA Combine, where you can kind of see how everything plays out a little bit. But like Ed Oliver, it's not going to be, to me, if he does fall, it's not going to be because of something off the field. Like, I don't want people thinking, he's just mad because he's on Applegate's side. Like, Applegate, Ricky's a guy that thought that he should have given the jacket to Coach Applegate. No, I'm not like that. Like, whatever. Like,
no, just take the just take the coat off.
My first thought, I'll be honest, was like, all right, are we gonna blow this up? Is this gonna be a thing? Is this gonna be a thing?
Yeah, I know.
Ed Oliver can't work with coaches. Don't even draft him. He can't work. He is not the player. He's a cancer in the locker room, guys. Cancer in the locker room. Like, that's what I thought in my head. I'm like, oh, we're going to blow this up so bad. Like, ESPN, it's all going to be Ed Oliver this, Ed Oliver that. Luckily, it wasn't.
Because I think they probably saw that, wow, that was a boring story, and LeBron probably did something that night that they needed to cover.
Wow, Applegate was kind of an asshole there. There's that, too. But, I mean, Ed Oliver, he's going to drop because of, like, on my big board, I like Greedy Williams better. I like Quinnen Williams better. I like Devin White better. Like, this draft is so defensively heavy that at the top, it's like, if you like Williams, the cornerback, all right, he's going to be ahead of him. All right, like, let's say Josh Allen, a guy we talked about, rises even higher. Well, if he jumps above Ed Oliver, obviously Ed Oliver's going down because somebody else has taken that spot.
And because you look at it, because it is so defensively heavy, teams are so much more able to be nitpicky and say, this guy's footwork is better than this guy's. This guy is quicker, off his break than this guy.
It's all about supply and demand.
That is totally it. And we're not talking about a quarterback heavy draft class. We are talking, like you said, very much defensive heavy draft class, and that is so good for so many teams who need these defensive players, and it's also good for these defensive guys who are coming out because there's going to be a lot of stock being put into them and a lot of money going into their bank account.
Here is the last thing I'm going to throw at you, Brandon. Any final things you want to talk about before we end this one?
I'm good.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. What do you think about Ed Oliver? What do you think about Quinnen Williams? I know this was mostly an Ed Oliver subject with a little bit of Quinnen Williams kind of dazzled on there, kind of sprinkled on top of this Ed Oliver cake. But let us know what you guys think of that. What do you think of our whole big board? Let us know. You can hit us up on Twitter or in the comments down below. Make sure to also check us out on Patreon. That's where you can help support us so that we can bring you more of this draft coverage each and every week. You can also make sure to get yourself an MVP t-shirt. That helps support us as well. Store down below in the description. MostValuablePodcast.com is also where you can get it and catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, be like Tutu Boyvier. He gave us a rate and review on Wednesday. I want to thank him for the 5-star rating. Make sure to go rate and review the podcast on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. I want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. And as always, have a good day, everybody.